Scott, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Good. Quick, I'm sure you've done a lot of homework already on Carson. When you look at it from a technical point of view, what went right the first 4 years, and maybe more importantly, what didn't work in 2020 that maybe you guys can focus on?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of factors, Mike, really. You get into protection, you get into technique, you get into the injuries that they had. I'm speaking obviously in 2020. The 4 years prior to that, things were just different for him in terms of all those things I just mentioned. He was probably a little technically better, and they were probably a little better in all the positions as well.
So one thing is, as a position coach, maybe you really hone in on the fundamentals and the techniques, so that when things go, they don't differ when things go bad or when things go well.
Say that again, Mike. I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit.
I guess as a position coach, the important thing is to make sure the technique, the footwork, and all that is the same whether things are going well or not going well.
Yeah, I think that definitely helps. I think every quarterback's a little bit different. So, fortunately with Press and with Frank having experience with Carson, they have some history. I don't, other than what I've seen on film. But I always kind of take the approach that we've got to figure out what is this guy like, what works for him, what doesn't work for him. And obviously there's some standard fundamentals that you have as a baseline, but I'm still in the process of all those things. And as I said, Frank and Press having some history with him is, hopefully going to make the process go quicker.
Thank you.
George Bremer.
Coach, you spent a lot of time with Marcus Brady up in Canada. What traits did you see in him that led you to recommend him to Frank Reich when he was looking for a quarterbacks coach in 2018?
Well, Marcus played for us. First, I coached Marcus when I was under Coach Trestman, and he was our backup quarterback. He started some games when the starter got hurt. He's really a brilliant guy. Just thinks through everything. Very, very competitive in terms of just hates to lose, hates to be wrong. So he's going to do everything he can to not let that happen. So when he first became a coach, I think his first 2 years we won the Grey Cup. So it went pretty well from him from the start. I like the way he thinks a quarterback play because I spent so much time with him, and I think we think similarly about what it takes. So I just had no doubt that, first of all, he's a worker. Number two, he's really bright. And number three, he played the position. And I knew personality-wise he'd be a fit for NFL talent.
Yeah, Scott. Have you ever worked on a staff like this with so many people who worked with quarterbacks before? And what do you think that adds or makes difficult for the staff?
Well, I don't know if I've ever worked with a staff that's this large. When I was coaching in Canada, I always had never consciously, but I always seemed to hire a lot of former quarterbacks. So I'm assuming some of that is kind of what's naturally happened here with Frank. It's a great staff. I haven't gotten a chance to spend a ton of time with the defensive staff, but from an offensive perspective, you get so many talented guys. I mean, Mike Groh and Press and Scotty Montgomery's been a head coach, and Clayton and Stroud. I mean, it's just a really well built, solid staff with guys that have come from different places, that have different opinions, that see things maybe a little differently, and that's a good thing where you can kind of figure out what works the best and get to the bottom of it quickly.
But when you've got that many quarterback minds, how do you decide what the right message is?
You mean to the quarterback specifically? Yeah, maybe a better question for Frank or Marcus. In my opinion, it's from my position, it's find out what the head coach and the offensive coordinator want the message to be. And it needs to be consistent. I'm a big believer that the quarterback needs to hear one voice. And when I say that, not just one person, but the information he gets needs to be the same if it's coming from me or from Marcus or from Frank. So I really feel like that's my responsibility to find out what it is that they want and to echo that.
Yeah, Kiefer?
Scott, specifically speaking to your job as the quarterback coach, how do you intend to get the best out of Carson Wentz this year and in the years to come?
I mean, honestly, I think that'll be a work in progress as I get to know him. From other than what I see on film, just working with him, what is he like an individual? What concepts does he like? What throws does he like? What drops? All those things will take me a little bit of time that hopefully Frank and Press have an idea on now, but I don't really have a straight-up answer for that until I get to know the player a little bit better.
Have you talked to Carson at all? Have you gotten to know him at all in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've spoken to him a few times, yeah.
JJ?
Hey Scott, when you talk about the process going quicker with Frank and Press having experience with Carson, does that just sort of shorten the feeling out process? Maybe you test fewer throws and fewer concepts when you get to training camp. How does that play out?
Yeah, I think so. Like I just said to Zach, I have a learning process still to do with the player, but Frank certainly would have less of one. I'm sure, already knows things he doesn't like. And if there's something he doesn't like, it probably just won't be in the playbook. So those are things that can sometimes take weeks or half a season, which I'd be surprised if it took that in our instance because of that history.
Milo?
Hey, Scott. Frank has talked about with Carson trying to get him comfortable, get him in rhythm. That's the way he thinks he's going to get the best out of him, or previous years that we saw. What does that mean to you? I mean, how do you do that with quarterbacks? How do you make them feel comfortable and get them in rhythm?
There's a lot of things, Jim, I think involved in that. One, going back once again to what plays does he like, what concepts does he like, and then another is, from my perspective, is making sure that his drops are really tied in with his primary read. So meaning keeping him on rhythm is that his drop time's up where he can take 3 and a hitch from the gun or 5 and a hitch from the gun, and when he does that, he's perfectly on time with his first read so that he doesn't have to wait or rush or do all those other things. Now, Carson's athletic, so if the timing's off, he can adjust, which is a great thing. But I think ideally from the guy sitting in my chair, you're just more accurate, you're just more consistent if you're timed up and in rhythm with whatever throw it is that you're going to make.
And then working kind of you kind of mentioned some of the factors that he had to deal with in Philadelphia last year, especially the injuries, I think, along the offensive line. Given what he's coming to in Indianapolis with the quality of play on the line, how much do you think that can help him just in terms of regaining some of that form?
Yeah, hard for me to speak on the differences between the two teams. I do, know what I've seen on film with our offensive line, and I think they do a great job. I think they're firm in the pocket. They keep the interior of the pocket from closing in on the quarterback, which is really, I think, an underrated factor in his comfort level standing back there. So, hopefully it's smooth and easy for him to adjust.
We'll go 2 more. Kevin Owens?
Hey Scott, until you see Jacob in preseason action, even how incomplete is just that evaluation?
It's pretty incomplete. I've watched him at Washington. I watched his, not preseason, his training camp stuff. I watched a couple of the scrimmages he played in and did some really nice things. He obviously is big arm, can make all the throws, but until I don't know, Kevin, if that's even just for me. That may be Marcus and Frank. Until you see a guy play, it's really hard to make a good evaluation. It's too bad for him that he didn't get a little bit more opportunity as a rookie to kind of get his feet wet and see where we're at. But I'm looking forward to working with him.
And last question, Joel Erickson.
Yeah, Scott, building off of Kevin's question, last year I know Marcus, when he was the quarterback's coach, really worked with Jacob a lot. How is it different when you're working with a younger quarterback who hasn't gotten that kind of time yet, and in terms of developing him?
Yeah, I think you just have to use different ways to develop him, from mental reps, from extra video, from after practice, staying out on the field and going through scripts because more than likely he didn't get that many reps. I think all those things are a factor. I think you spend a little extra time between series is when Carson's out there in practice. You know, you get those young guys right next to you and you're quizzing them as we go. Hey, what's the point? What's the protection? What's all, you know, I just think it takes time and reps, and mental reps are as good as anything, but they ultimately, going back to the having played part, is they ultimately have to also do it on the field. So, yeah, I would say it's a lot different than what you do from a starter, but you have to find ways to get them some reps on the side.